All right. Hey, Victoria. We're still on the starting soon. Just want to make sure you're here.
Hi, Aaron. I'm here.
Hey. Whoop,
How are
whoop,
you?
whoop. All right. Got a few people in the chat. You should be able to hear us. Let us know that you can do that, that you can hear us. And we're going to get this started. I want to give a moment for everyone to, settle in. So let us know in the chat if you can hear us. You should see. All right. We've got someone letting us know you can hear us. That's great. Appreciate that. Hey, Anne. Hey, Penny. Anne's going to be the third star of the show. So excited to dive in. Okay, so I'm going to do the quick intro and then, yeah, let's kick this off. Hey, Victoria. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I do want to, before we jump in, we've got 4 stars today. We've got you, maybe I wouldn't consider, we got 3 stars. We've got yourself and we've got Naya. So remember Naya is famous at Airtable for their reaction to when we launched automations.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was fun. Naya, your video was shared far and wide across the team. We were so excited. And basically, our head of customer engagement was just like, every reaction to automations needs to be like this. Like, that's what we're trying to drive that excitement every day. It's so wonderful.
So Naya, know that you're famous. For folks who haven't seen it, if you don't mind dropping a link to that tweet in the chat, or maybe not Naya, maybe you'll be a little embarrassed to share it, but anyone go ahead and find it and share. It was memorable. I think we all remember that as the one of the highlights of that launch. But we're not here. We are kind of here to talk about platform, but we are more here to talk about base design. And Anne, being the other star that I want to talk about, was nice enough to submit a quite complex base that we're both kind of eager to jump in. So if you haven't had yet, grab a beer, just like Victoria. I think it's 6 p.m. here. Everyone's after work. Even if you're during work, feel free to start that. So Victoria, maybe start with a quick intro for folks who weren't here last week. A quick
Yeah.
intro of yourself, and then we'll kind of jump into the base.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. Really excited to be here and joining Aron again. This is so much fun. I am a customer success manager at Airtable in New York, and I work with our enterprise clients and customers to um, up-level their use of Airtable. So that runs from everything from, understanding what their goals and priorities are, and like stepping away from Airtable, like what is it that you do every day? Like, what are you trying to do? Answering those questions, then understanding how Airtable fits into that and how their whole team can start using it, whether through training or whether through thinking through complex base builds, pushing the limits of the product every day, and also providing as much feedback as possible to the product team.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So base design, like we have, Victoria's the pro at base design, so I'm always excited to show her base.
One of the many, I would
One of the
say.
many for sure, but I would say one of the best. I wouldn't say that. I honestly don't share my bases with that many people except you, because I know that if I share it with you, it's gonna have a good base structure after the fact. So I don't need to look further than that. So yeah. So for myself, Aaron Kornblatt, I also work at Airtable, but Automate All the Things is my little, where I play around with different formats, and base design is one of my favorites. So really excited to jump in. So yeah, let's just go up, and I'm gonna start sharing the base, and let me go into here, and then I need to share the screen so you, Victoria, can see what is going on here.
Yeah, I
And then
can
I
see.
need to put you in the right place on my desktop. So I know the screen, kind of what folks see, seems really cool. It's a little janky on my side. There we go. So we've got Anne's base. So Anne, please make yourself known in the chat. You are going to be a third co-host today. I'm going to be looking at you, asking you questions. But a summary, I'll start with that. Maybe a summary of this base. Anne was nice enough to kind of include a high level goal. I'm not going to read this word by word, but essentially what Anne is trying to track is making sure that they never miss a filing date. and filing dates are determined at the jurisdiction level. So I'm going to start with this one. And so essentially you have jurisdictions, firms who are law firms or companies who are responsible for that jurisdiction, what lobbyist is at that firm is responsible, the type of jurisdiction, and then each one of those jurisdictions, I'm going to make this a little larger so we can all see, have specific filing cadences. So some are quarterly, some are annual, some are semi-annual, and they want to know, how do we make sure we never miss one of those deadlines?
Yeah.
So essentially, every one of these jurisdictions should have multiple potential filing dates that they don't want to miss. So, Anne, let me know if that's like a good summary. And more generally, like maybe if you're like, oh, I'm not a corporate lobbyist, what is the point of joining the stream? Well, one, maybe you should be a corporate lobbyist. But if that's not on your roadmap, this is really useful for maybe vendor renewals, quarterly things that you need to do. Any kind of, Victoria, any ideas of, the base design structure that we're going to do today? What does it relate to other use cases?
Sure. I can think of many things. So like quarterly, like, OKRs, or like one thing that comes to mind is what's coming up for us is like end of year reviews. And so making sure that like, okay, of all the employees that you have, like, do you have review kind of like slots for each of them? Or another thing that comes to mind is like, as Aron just mentioned with vendor management, renewals of contracts that might be coming in, and whether that contract is 6 month, 1 year, 2 year. And so not having to remember, oh my gosh, how long was that contract, but really putting that on autopilot and actually creating that calendar for yourself, whether a year out or 2 years out, whatever that might look like. And so giving yourself an idea of what the future looks like for anything that is going to come up on a periodic cadence.
Yeah, totally. So you can even think of this, remember last week we were talking about like, set amount of tasks you need to do on a project and there was a due date. Well, you can think of this as like, I have these tasks almost, which are filings in this case, that need to happen at periodic moments. So instead of starting at a due date and then working backwards, we're going to start with a start date and then work periodically from there, from this base. So let's get into it. Let's actually I'm sorry, Anne, there's a lot of problems with your base. So we're going to go table by table and quickly.
There's a lot of opportunities, Aron.
Yes. How would you call this? You would call this, there are things we can work, we can improve. I'm struggling to say that. Okay. So one by one. So filing, for me, when I'm looking at this, like filings is going to be that task, right? So we should have, that date filed. That should be like a date jurisdiction. That seems fine. It's a lookup, which is a little weird, based on date due. Whoa.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Well, let's see where date due is coming from. Date due is from the filing cadence, right?
Yes.
So I think if we explore filing cadence a little bit, I think, and you were trying to get there, you were like, okay, I'm trying to figure out these due dates. And then from there, I'll walk back into, okay, what jurisdiction does this due date belong to? And then exactly the Bob Ross happy little accidents. And so here is where you've got some really great information about what's the time period covering, and what are my bands of time. So I think that's why we're getting that lookup, but we can go a little bit further into understanding, where these time periods are coming from and how they inform the filing dates that we're trying to get to in the filings table.
So we've got type, which is a linked record for type of filings. So these seems like a frequency, right? And whenever I see a table with just the linked record, that is like, this almost feels like it could be a single select.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I spoke to Anne before, and the frequency is at the jurisdiction level. So I think as a first step, what I would recommend, Victoria, tell me if I'm right here, is to remove this types of filing and put it at the jurisdiction level as a single select.
So just so I understand correctly, jurisdictions are kind of like the objects that we're working with that everything is running off of. So
Yes.
jurisdictions have types of filings. They have periods of time between when things need to be filed, and then they have cadences, and specific firms service specific jurisdictions. So they're kind of the largest bucket where everything is going on, and then there are smaller things that we need to keep track of in terms of what firm is working with it, what type of filing, and then what's the cadence. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me now. Mm-hmm.
So I think, yes, I agree with you totally. And then I think the only difference between the different types of filings, they might have a distinction in terms of what you need to do. That might be at the jurisdiction level. But really, I think what Anne is struggling with is this idea of like, okay, well, assuming for this jurisdiction, there's a quarterly filing, how do I make sure I don't miss any of those specific filings that are related to that jurisdiction?
I've got a question for Anne.
Sure.
Anne, are there times when a certain jurisdiction might have two types of filings associated with it?
So I know, I hope the answer is no. Yes.
Oh gosh, it's never clean. That's fun.
Okay. Well, so let's maybe just for simplicity's sake, let's have an initial filing and then quarterly. Okay, that's not so bad. Mm-hmm. So we can just actually in the filings here. So what I think is like we should differentiate whether it's initial and subsequent in the filings themselves. So this is more of something we should keep in mind when we're filing, but they're not. We shouldn't distinguish them beyond that. Does that make sense to you, Victoria?
So every jurisdiction will have initial filing. Say, hi, I'm a lobbyist. I need to register myself with that. And then then it's like, okay, depending on what it is, then we have a cadence that goes after that. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, cool. I agree with that. I think that's better than like we have different types of frequency and different types of filings, which we could have handled as well. Yeah. So, okay, so it sounds like what we can do right off the bat, if you is remove types of filings, because this is more of a frequency question, and we can move it to a single select at the jurisdiction level.
Yes.
Okay. So frequency, single select. And then we're going to say monthly, quarterly, annual. Annually? Annually. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm really bad at naming things. And I'm just bad at naming things. It's stupid. It's the bane. Okay.
You know, I always wonder, how does Airtable choose the colors that it's going to use for your selects?
So it's actually consistent. So it's always, the first one's always going to, I know this because I record a lot of my new videos. Yearly. That's way better. Yearly.
Yeah.
I appreciate everyone was thinking about it. And then one person put it in the chat, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. So let's imagine this one is quarterly. Okay. So filing cadence. So you're right that jurisdiction is kind of where everything emanates out of. So this feels like a good place to work out of. So firm one, that's great. Which lobbyist is a lookup at that firm, I imagine. Yeah, that's perfect. Type of jurisdiction, great. Info from website. Filing cadence. This is where things get hairy, I think. So filing cadence has the date as a primary field. How do we feel about that?
This is a little, it doesn't give us more information than just a date. So it doesn't let us know which filing it's for. So which jurisdiction that filing might be for. Right. But I do think there's some crucial information here in terms of covering the time period. I really like that. And gives us the date that we need. So from the last conversation we had, I love to name my tables as what's inside of them.
Right.
So we're trying to have filings in here, but what our filings table actually has is what we really want, right?
Right. Yeah. So yes, so I totally agree with you. So I think filings cadence is actually already at the jurisdiction level.
Mm-hmm. We already have.
What we want to keep track of are those filings. So my recommendation here would actually to be delete this table, but kind of keep those elements that we care about, right? Yep. So type is already, it's a frequency. So we have that at the jurisdiction level. Covering time period is like maybe a start date with a due date. That feels like something we can use versus text, which is hard to work with.
Yeah.
And then the jurisdiction, which is the linked record. So I'm going to keep those in mind. And we're just going to go ahead and delete this table because we're going to move all of that information to filings. So, okay, that messes a few things up, but let's clean it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to jurisdiction. Filing cadence was a linked record that I don't think we need. And we don't need. Yeah. It's always fun to delete fields and unnecessary tables. But now we know that we're going to need, I don't know, like we need a link between filings and jurisdictions, right? We need to know, okay, so back into here, we've got an error here. Let's figure that out. Type links to types of filings. Delete?
Yeah.
Okay. Boom. Okay, now jurisdiction was a lookup.
So what do we keep that? Sorry. No, I would make it a linked record.
Okay, back to jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's save that. And let's start with one. I think one kind of makes sense. So state one is going to be our first one here. So let's link state one. There we go. Date filed, date due. Okay.
Date filed. I think that's a little bit different than period, start and end. I think you need two dates for start and end.
Okay, so date due. Like, do you keep this one as a date?
I would say it looked like what it looked like was it's like this is the filing. It's like a pay period. It's like this is the what we're covering. So whereas date filed is the date that this paperwork was filed on. Start and end is the start of the filing period and the end of the filing period that we kind of want to know what bands are we covering. So I think we might want to have exactly instead of a due date, more so, end of period.
Whoop.
And it'll always be the first of the first month of that cadence, and then if it's quarterly, then the last day of that end quarterly month, or if it's monthly, the last day of the month.
So what would you recommend? So right now, let's say state one, if I go to jurisdictions, it's an unnamed record, which is always a red flag. So what would you name this?
I would name it the jurisdiction and the period.
Okay.
I would say jurisdiction separator, whatever your chosen separator of choice is.
It's usually dash, but my keyboard is broken, so it's space now, and I'm sorry about that. It's going to be.
You want to do a vertical line? That's my favorite, actually.
Oh, vertical line. What do you mean, like this?
Yeah,
Whoa.
exactly.
This opened up a whole new world. I like it.
Yeah, I liked and then do start, and then I guess. Is your Airtable keyboard broken?
Is my Airtable? Yeah, no, it's just one key. So for folks who don't know, I'm a little, I'm not know if I'm ashamed of it, but there's definitely like a level of geekiness that I have an Airtable branded keyboard that I built. So I don't know if folks joining, if you want to build it yourself, I'm happy to send you the specs. You just have to solder it yourself.
And so then I would say dash, but whatever you think is maybe space or dot or something. You can find a dash through the emoji picker too. Maybe. And end of period.
So yeah, Colleen, I do have a Airtable keyboard. Oops. Okay, we don't have a start date and a due date. So let's imagine. Let's imagine we have a start date. Like a start period is next quarter. So it starts in November 1st. That should update here. There we go. It's a little ugly. I'll change it.
Yeah.
I know. We don't like those JavaScript date formats. Let's do this date.
And something I recently learned is for datetime format, there are fun little shortcuts. So you can put like lowercase or capital L in here instead of doing
Yeah,
DD,
yeah.
YY.
And it'll
Yeah.
just look good.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think you might need to put it in quotes.
Yep, I can do that.
There you
Yeah,
go.
there's like a whole list somewhere. Let me find that list. Oh, this looks good. I like that.
There you go.
So for folks who are wondering what we're talking about, is that you have um, this little date and time functions. If you go into date time format, oh, I can't do an underscore. That's kind of stupid. There we go. Specifiers. Boom. So the
This is yeah, this
L
is
right
like
here.
the scrolls of wisdom right here. It's really helpful. It saves you a lot of time.
Okay, let's do that one more time. Date time format. Let's go. Whoa. Apologies for that. No, that's my bad. That's my bad. That's what happens when I try to be fancy. Make this back. Boom. How does that look? Okay, we're back. Nothing happened.
I need that extension.
Ah. I would pay so much money for that extension. Okay.
I think you need to grab the L.
Oops. And L. Here we go. That was the formatting part of this webinar.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So Anne mentioned start and end period should both fall before the due date. Yeah, that's fine. We can figure that out.
Yeah.
So essentially the due date is 15th, and then that's for the next quarter. So essentially how we're thinking about this, if I'm not wrong, is that now if this is saying quarterly, I should have four filings for the next year, assuming that these are always like next year's filings. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. How do we, because like this one could be yearly. I gotta say annually sounds better, but yearly it is.
So I think this is like, I don't know if you're trying to like walk into this, but this is where you start to realize where scripts can be really helpful, because it's like, not only am I going to need a calculation of like, how do I calculate this date or the specific complex logic that I have, but also how do I also create records that adhere to this logic that I built. And so what we're asking for is, how do we both calculate which what the cadence of filings is, and then create linked records in order to create kind of like placeholders for those findings. And so that's where a script is really helpful, because it combines the ability to do complex calculations with the ability to also create new records.
So you're asking me if that was a trap for you to say that, and I would like to yes, it was. It was a leading question, but okay. I think one distinction I think folks may ask at this point is, why not use automations, right? Yeah. So automations, we could say, yearly, go ahead and create the filings. What in your mind kind of distinguishes like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and create an automation, or I'm going to write a script?
Yeah, I think the one thing is, Airtable's formula editor is powerful.
Right.
It's you can get lost easily in it. So with this, we would be building a very complex if statement. We would probably be working with like several different date adds. And it would be a very long if statement that would be really irritating to maintain, to be quite honest. And then we would have to do another workaround where we'd have to like build the string and then pull the information over and build blank records that don't have information built into them already. So it's not ideal. It's totally doable, but this can kind of give you a more first-class solution. And then I think one of your ideas is being able to actually interact with the base to create them, which is something, giving someone a user-intuitive type of way to do this. So that's why it's definitely more ideal to create a script for this versus a formula for this. Although I think that understanding how formula can be created for this is super helpful.
Okay. So yeah, we've been learning how to write scripts. As in me and folks who are joining on the Airtable TV stream. So I would like to go down that route. And and just for folks who kind of thinking of like, why would you do that? So just show differently what we would have to do to write this as an automation. The automation would be relatively simple, right? It would say, okay, well, when someone, adds quarterly or annually, go ahead and create that number of records in the filings table so we have that memory of what we need to do. However, calculating these dates, that's really when it becomes complicated, because you need to have a specification, say this is filing number 1, and it needs to remember what was the start of that period. And whenever you're working across different records, it becomes very difficult to do a formula. However, we're lucky enough to know how to write scripts, or somewhat know how to write scripts. And that is actually very easy when it comes to what that being remembering what the beginning of the period was, creating those records on the fly. And frankly, I'm pretty confident to somewhat be able to write the script. So we're going to kind of jump in. So letting me know in the chat, does why we're writing a script make sense? And Anne, we're going to share the script after the fact. So even if you don't write scripts, it should be easy enough to adapt to the use case, and we'll share it with everyone. But really excited to dive in. And if you're kind of thinking of I'd like to learn how to write scripts, go to twitch.tv/AirtableTV. Tomorrow at 4, we're having our second series with Geo out of 4. And it's actually going to be different, but somewhat similar to what we're doing today. But this has some unique challenges. Cool.
And I think if we get into this, you'll just realize that if you're comfortable with formulas, scripting is just a really natural progression. Because a lot of the formulas that we've built really follow JavaScript logic and constraints.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. Let's jump in. So apps. Let's go into add scripts as a dashboard. And let's install our scripting app. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so maybe start, what is the outline of the script, as always?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I love doing that. So the outline is, can you make this side by side if that's possible?
Yeah, totally. Here we go.
Okay, so what are we doing the button thing?
Let's start with input. Let's start with user input for which county, with no restrictions, just whatever county. And then let's make sure we have monthly. We have one of each. Quarterly. There we go.
Oh, so what you'd like is for us to create the jurisdiction, add the frequency, and then as we add that record, then add the filing.
No, just the user input. The first step of the script is which jurisdiction would you like to create filings for? Simple as possible.
Okay, so the first step would be ask user for input for jurisdiction input. And then now that we know what record that that person wants to use, we're gonna need to load. We're gonna need to load the records in the table to understand what we're dealing with, and then load records in the table. So we're gonna do load records in jurisdictions. So let's say jurisdictions table. It's so hard to think this out loud.
It is, and it's gonna be even harder to code it live with me writing and you thinking. But we're
experiment. Okay.
Yeah, we got this.
The reason that we're loading the records in the jurisdiction table is because we want to figure out what's the frequency selected. Right. So what Airtable does is scripting, it kind of silos it away and says, you need to ask Airtable for the information to load it into the script so that the script understands what it's working with. And the same thing for writing it back to the base. You need to tell Airtable what you want to put into the base. It doesn't just implicitly know. Yeah. So now we're going to say load the records into this jurisdiction table, and then we're going to say from that input, find the record, and then from that record's input, find the frequency value. So the value that we selected for frequency. one
Yeah.
thing you can
So,
do, Aaron,
uh-huh.
is go ahead. Never mind. Don't worry about it. Okay, so find the frequency value. Okay, great. So then once we understand the frequency value in terms of like text, then we want to
Mm-hmm.
translate it into numbers, right?
Yep.
So we'll say translate that into a numerical value. And then we also want to know, I think, can you go and are there any dates in the jurisdiction table?
So, I spoke to Anne before,
Okay.
and let's do the date thing at the end because there's two challenges with dates. So first is there's a kind of like contract date, right? So what I mean by that is like, okay, let's just do it. Yeah, it makes sense. So let's
Okay.
say start date at the jurisdiction level, right? So what we're saying here is that this is the first time we're talking to that jurisdiction, the date
Right.
at which we start.
Like initiation. Yeah,
Right.
initial filing date.
It wouldn't be an initial filing date. It would just be
Okay.
like, right, and that would be the start date. And then you want the period.
Hi, Becky.
Oh, hey. The period is actually going to be the first business, like the first of the following month. That's when
Okay.
we're going to start for everything. So what
Ooh,
we'll
funky.
do, but I have a cheat for this.
Okay.
Next month, first date of the month, Airtable
Is it
community.
Stack Overflow? Oh no, Community Overflow. Even better.
Yeah, there we go. So I think I found it somewhere here. Was it this one? No, this is Zapier one. Calculate first day of the last month. There we go.
Yes. This is a fun one.
Is that it? No, that's not it. I had one where it was just like the first day of the last month.
It's you have to date add and then date parse from that date add.
Yeah, there we go. Jeremy, if you ever watch this, thank you.
Nice.
So we're going to just copy paste this. This is essentially saying you give it a date and then you take the last month's first date, but we're going to move that up 1 month. And this is actually a really good example. So there's some things that are really, really hard in JavaScript of like managing dates and finding the first day of the following month. Actually relatively simple with two things. One, formulas, and the generosity of the Airtable community. So whenever you can make it into a relatively simple formula, you can just go ahead and take that. So we're going to call this.
I agree with that.
So let's
these are what I like to call helper fields.
Oops. Yeah, exactly. So my JavaScript knowledge would never be, good enough.
Don't count yourself out, Aaron. Don't do that.
No, I never want to. I don't want to. I don't want to be that. There's no point in me learning like really annoying functions in JavaScript. Like if there's a formula, I'm at my core always going to be a formula person. So we're adding 0 months to start date. And then we're taking start date again. I think, yeah, that makes sense. Start date. Let's save that. Boom, first of the following month. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, I got to add one.
Yeah, I think we go, do -1 again.
No, it's here. It's +1.
Oh, okay.
So it's just saying next first of the following month. Okay, cool.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Boom. We just saved ourselves 45 minutes talking about dates in JavaScript.
That's so true.
I appreciate you coming on, Victoria, every time. I will never make you sit through 45 minutes of dates on JavaScript. Or anyone. I appreciate all of you coming. So, cool. Okay, so now we have the following month start date. And this is going to always be the start of the period from which we count quarterly, right? So we're going to say, okay, quarterly starts here, and then we're going to take the first of the month and then always add 3 months. And that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
So we're going to take that first of the month once we update, once we create those filings starting from the first of the month. Okay,
Aaron, when we're talking about taking shortcuts in formulas, do you want to just do that for the frequency too? Of like creating a helper field, like a switch field for quarterly, yearly, monthly?
My God, yes.
Okay, let's do that.
So I coded when I was practicing.
Oh, you did? Okay.
But it's fine. Let's do it. This is way better. So we're essentially saying translate that frequency into numbers is actually just, we're going to call this frequency, number frequency. See, bad name. That's a bad name. But we're going to live with it. So you're a fan of Switch. So walk me through how I would switch.
Yeah, Switch is my favorite. So Switch is like a case if you've ever done that in VBA,
Yeah.
or maybe I forget if it's the actual formula. But basically, instead of writing 1,000 nested ifs, you can say check for this condition, and if it's this value, then give me this return, or
Okay.
return this other value. So frequency, we're going to check to see if it's quarterly, if the value is quarterly, and then if it is, we're going to say give me 4.
Okay. Okay. So then you just follow the pattern. So
It gives you a nice
uh,
pattern. Exactly. So
yearly is one. What was the other one? I forget about it.
I forget about it too. Is it semi-annually / biannually?
I don't know.
Monthly. So 12.
Monthly. 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 So let me know if that makes sense. We've actually saved a lot of time by doing this.
Okay, great.
Boom. Okay. Awesome. So there is a question from Anne that I want to, could the start date be a lookup from the firm start date? So it seems like firms like term begins, and the answer is totally
Yeah.
yes. So you actually just make this a lookup, and everything else will follow. So no worries when you share the base. I won't do that because these are in the future now, and those might not be in the future.
And lookups are crazy. But yeah.
So I just want to come back here. So essentially, we've actually translated this. So done with formula.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I imagine is maybe the penultimate or final step there.
So it's like ask user for jurisdiction input, load the records, find the values. And now what we want to do is, now that we know there are 4 records that we want to create, we need to figure out like how we can create those records, and then how we can add values within those records, right?
Right.
So we want to create an array to for each record that we have here, or for their record. We want to create an array of records that outputs the values that we want in each record. We want to create an array of filing records that represent the data that we're using from the jurisdiction record, that has the right values, like you said.
Yeah. So essentially, what we're gonna do is just kind of saying that back in like this. We're gonna go and get the first of the month. We're gonna get the frequency, and then we're gonna say, okay, 4 times or 6 times or 12 times, go ahead and create the filing record with the right jurisdiction, with the right due date, with the right start date. And so there's going to be a little bit of work of calculating that. And so I think with that outline, we're kind of good to go. I'm going to maybe for the beginning, just kind of code like this. Maybe a little confusing to folks.
Okay.
Let's start here, and we'll see if we need to kind of go. So we're 40 minutes in here, Victoria. We can go a little over. That's okay. I think we can write the script in 20, 25 minutes with a few mistakes in here. So ask user for, all I know is that we need to do a get table.
Yeah. So there's a couple things you can do. You can load your records. You can load your records first. Let's actually split those, inverse those really quickly.
Okay. Let's just start here. Yeah.
Because the thing is, we're going to be able to declare a table. Okay. So just say let table, or let jurisdictions table. I like to name the table so you don't get confused. Equal, and you're using camel case, which is the best way, base.getTable. And then in the table, you're going to write jurisdictions, because you can either put the name of the table or the ID of the table. And so we're saying from the base, get the table at jurisdictions. And then what we want to do is we want to actually query the base now, or we want to query the base now that we have the table we want. And so what we want to do is let query, or let jurisdictions query equal jurisdictions table dot select records async. And because it's async, we want to put await in front of that. And so this is the part where you need to call Airtable and ask it to do something. And so anytime you're calling Airtable, you have to put await in front of it, because you're doing it asynchronously. That's all I know. I wish I knew better. And then Then from query, you're going to go down and one more line, enter, and then you're going to say let records equal query dot records. Because if you console.log queries, you'll see that it's actually, I believe, like, I actually don't know what queries looks like, but if you console.log records, you'll see it's an array of objects, and each object is a record ID and the name of the record.
Boom. So
now we've looked at our records.
Yeah, so I just want to walk back, folks, what we did there. So we essentially loaded the table. That means like, okay, we're going to be using this jurisdiction table in some form or fashion. We got to go ahead and tell scripting app to like, go ahead and get that information. Mm-hmm. And then we do like load the actual queries. So we can actually console log it, see what that feels like. And we'll see is that it's an object that has stuff that we don't care about. Right? So it has .record IDs, which is that first element, and then it has records. And frankly, like record IDs are useful, but records are usually what you want because it has that ID as well.
And right? Records is a special type of object that you can use more functions on in Airtable. Right. And so that's why we want to isolate them rather than have the query object itself.
Cool. Okay. So then how do we let someone say like, okay, I want to select this, create filings for this specific state or this specific jurisdiction? So
what I would do then is we want to ask it for an input, basically, right? And so again, anytime you're asking Airtable for something, you want to use await. So we're going to say, let jurisdiction input, if that's what we want to call our variable. You want to be really clear about what your variables are so that when you go back through this, you don't scratch your head. So we'll say await input dot record.
Input dot
record. So as you see, as we're doing this, there's a bunch of stuff popping up that's kind of a helper for us. And so record is just one of the inputs that you can select. So we're going to do input record async and then open parenthesis. And you can go ahead and put any description you want here, Aron. And you can say, what do you want? Like choose your fighter, choose your jurisdiction, and then comma. The structure of this is saying, first give me a text input, and then you'll see the squigglies. Now give me a table. And so we want to say, I want the records to be chosen from the jurisdictions table.
Right, jurisdictions table.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Exactly. And so now if you run this script, it's going to do some things in the background, but what you'll see, we'll get the console logs, right?
Let's remove those. Let's just, I think we kind of get those. So let me know in the chat, how is this feeling? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
So far, all we're going to do here is just, have the user tell us what they care about, like what jurisdiction they want to use. So let's run that. So it's going to say, pick a record.
A nice input.
Boom.
And all our records from that jurisdictions table are showing. And so now if you console.log jurisdiction input, if Aron selects a jurisdiction from the jurisdiction input, it's going to give him back a record object. Boom, the ID and the name, and that's what a record object is in Airtable.
Okay, so essentially, now we're going to be able to say like, okay, we're going to create the filings for state 1, and the next step here is to go and get these two values.
Yeah.
So the frequency and probably the first of the month. Those are the two kind of things we want to pass over to the filings in the future of the script. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I might not. Yeah. Okay. So now from your jurisdiction input, you can go ahead and say like, you can now say you want the frequency and then you want the first of the month. So let's say let frequency equal. We're going to say jurisdiction input and then you'll see get cell value. And so this means you can get the value of the cell from the field. And then if you open up your parenthesis, you'll see it says name, like put your field ID or field name. And so we're going to put the field of that. And in the drop down, we get to choose that, which is really, really nice.
Okay.
So exactly.
So just so folks, I've been playing around with this a lot to not seem like a fool on the stream. And generally in life, I think that's a good goal. Is sometimes I think that let frequency when you're declaring a variable and then instantly making it equal something, what I like to do is just console.log and then what you're trying to go get. So, right, so jurisdiction input, that's the value. And then you could say like, okay, these are the things I can do with this. I can get the ID we see in our console log, the name which we see in our console log. But what I want is get cell value, and then I can write frequency. So that's just, something that I do very often is just before I do anything is just like, okay, what is the output of all the things I can do? So if we do this the other way, so let me just console.log frequency.
Now that you've declared it, yeah.
Right, yeah, frequency like that. Let's run that, pick a record, boom, state 1.
Yeah, ooh, fun. I'm glad you did console.log because I was going to, and then also we already did all the work here to get the frequency value. So actually the field that we want is frequency value, not necessarily frequency.
You're right. Okay, so I just want to spend a moment here because this is, if I could swear on the stream, I would say it's effing confusing. When you return a single select, you would expect it to give you quarterly, but it's actually going to give you two other things. It's going to give you the ID of that selection and then the color. So the ID is very useful if you're comparing two different single selects. Note that they may have the same name, but they're not going to have the same ID. That way you can differentiate among them. And color is useful for, I don't know, maybe you want to recreate that color elsewhere. Frankly, I've never used the color, but it's there. So you got to know about it. Just pro tip. So what we actually want, in theory, if we want console log.name right here, that would give us the quarterly, right? But
that would give us the name quarterly.
Right? It's gonna say like, okay, that's what we're probably looking for, but we made a mistake here. It's always good to make mistakes on the stream.
And we want
frequency. Number frequency. Great naming. And you'll notice that instantly Airtable tells us frequency.name is a mistake here, because there is no such thing as frequency.name because that's just going to be a number now.
If you go into the documentation, you can see what outputs the field types, the different field types will give you. So multi-select or a linked record will always give you an array. A single select will always give you an object. A date is a string. Yeah, so all this fun stuff.
Yeah. So more advanced, but just know that that's an error that's gonna. I feel like we might have lost a lot of folks in the stream. So let me know if this is still.
Let us know how you feel.
Let us know. I know that this is a little bit sometimes feels opaque and feels intimidating. I know I was a couple weeks ago, frankly, especially at the idea of doing a stream where I'm coding. But 2 weeks later, here we are, and we're doing pretty good. So let us know.
What we're doing right now, if we were to boil it down, is we're creating variables or shorthand for something that would just essentially be a very, very long formula that we would have to write out all long form. So the benefit of scripts that you can do that you can't really do in formulas is you can say, like, there is a world where you could put a formula or a kind of a function together that has all of this long form. But what we're doing is say, call records query.records or call jurisdiction input, all of that long stuff behind it. And then we're going to use those variables and construct them in a shorter, easier to read formula, basically, that'll give instructions. So right now we're doing all the longhand work to create that shorthand, and then we're going to use the shorthand to then kind of create this action on Airtable. Cool.
Yeah, totally. So folks seem to be there. Ethan, seems scary. It is scary. Let's be real. Writing code feels very daunting, but bite-sized pieces, I think writing out the pieces and there's a lot of ways you can skin this cat, right? There's a lot of ways you can write this script. So play around with how you do it. And then if you do write a script or you can't write a script or you're blocked, let me know. I'm always happy to help out. I do enjoy debugging scripts now. I'm that type of person. Okay, so frequency, let's console log it. Frequency. Let's see what the output is. We expect it, if it was quarterly, to be 4, 1, because we know that county 2, let me go back here, sorry for that.
Clearly.
County 2 is 1, number frequency, that's outputting the right thing. Make this full screen. Okay. So
Cool.
now we know how many records we need to create.
And then we need the
Right.
start date, right?
Oh, right. Okay.
This is gonna be fun. Okay, same thing.
Yeah.
And then instead we're gonna use a different field.
So we're gonna go and get.
If you erase those two apostrophes or quotation marks, you should be there. You go. I'll give you the.
So do I want the first of the month? Yeah, that's probably what. Yeah.
Sorry. So,
Okay. Let's console log that. Console log is your best friend.
it is.
Boom. Let's run that. Pick a record. Okay, so February 2nd. So this got that little JavaScript-y feel, date. Well, that's problems for future script writing.
Yeah. Okay. So now the goal is I need to create for this record, I need to create the frequency of records that I need, as well as starting from the start date and then build based on that start date.
Yes.
And what I'm adding.
Yeah. So this we did, right? So we have the two kind of elements we need to go ahead and start creating those filings, right? So we're now kind of changing tables, and we're going to start taking that information, which is frequency and start date, and creating the filings. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. The one thing that we need to do here, and I always just use I'll find something like on Stack Overflow, is you'll need a date add function.
Yes.
Do you have it already?
Yeah, I do.
Cool. How I started learning scripting, and I'm sure Aron has felt this the same way, is for certain things, someone's already gone and solved that problem on the internet. So just as you might have learned really complicated formulas from Excel forums, there's something out there for JavaScript as well. Good question. These scripts do not support NPM packages. Everything in JavaScript is vanilla JavaScript. If you want to import packages, that's something that you want to do more for a custom app. But for right now, for the scripting app, we can just go ahead and what I do is just do Google, but I'm sure you have one already, and we'll add a function. And functions are just as they are in Airtable. They're predetermined sets of JavaScript that say, take in these parameters, output these parameters. So here we've got add month to a date in JavaScript. You always just want to put in JavaScript after it. And you'll find some Stack Overflow answer. And I would say only do this for very small things. Don't do this for, things that you want to build yourself. But this is good.
So let's just keep this open. And when we get to adding dates, we'll do a little bit of work. Right. Okay. So I have the answer here. Right. So we need to set a date, a variable, which is a date. We can input that existing date in it and then just set month. So we'll get there. We'll get there. Let's do it without the date first, and then we'll do that as a last step. How does that feel?
Cool. That feels good. Cool. Okay. So now I think we've come to the point where we need to create a loop. Yeah. So that we say for this frequency, create this kind of record and create this array.
Okay, so I'll be honest, I've written a lot of for loops in my life, but I forget every single time how to do it. Okay, so for, let's copy paste this actually and just kind of explain this. So, whoops.
So what a loop is a way to tell a script to do something multiple times. So we'll say, while something is true, do this. And then the last part, so here where it says for let I equal 0, we're going to say, we're going to say let I, we're just creating a variable and say it's equal to 0. This is shorthand right now, but we'll say, I guess, for every time that I is less than 9 or then run this loop or run whatever code comes after here. So right after those parentheses, you're going to have some curly braces, and in them, you're going to have some codes and sets that you want it to do. So then the last part of that, after that semicolon, I++ is what to do after the script, after this loop has run. And I++ means just add 1 to I. So what we're doing is we're incrementing that iterator. I think is shorthand for iterator. I think that's why you're going to always see I. And so the next time this loop runs, instead of I equaling 0, I is going to equal 1. So you'll see that this will run every time until I actually equals 9, then it's going to stop because it's only going to do it while I is less than 9. And so that's how JavaScript allows you to do multiple things at once, where formulas, just run once and that's it. This actually allows you to do kind of like multiple calculations based on the conditions that you have.
Totally. So here, we're not going to use 9 because...
Right. Instead, we're going to use frequency.
Boom. So that's why we calculated frequency. So we're going to say, okay, run this loop frequency amount of times. So if it's annual, run it once to create 1 record. If it's quarterly, run it 4 times to create 4 records. That's going to be our loop. So that's why it was important to go and get it.
Yeah. And then I think one thing that I do here, I'm not sure if this is the best way, but I actually create an array before the for loop.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So this is going to be like filings.
Right.
Right. And essentially, yeah, you're right. The filings equal. So I have to So if you ask me what happened yesterday in your day, I had to hit my head against the wall to figure out that you had to create an empty array. And the reason is that you need to have something to put the records you want to create in, right?
You got to create the box before you can put something in the box.
Right. I had all these, I knew how to, so you got to create, and this is maybe a little bit of a leap for folks who are used to maybe something like very procedural programming, where what we're trying to do is to create those records that we want to put in Airtable as an array and then do that update just once, right? So we're just saying like, hey, we've built this array that has all the information we want to send to the table and update and create the records. So we first need to create that empty array, which we're going to put all of that information in. So essentially what we're going to do here is add to that array or input that information into that array. So that's totally right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So in here, we Airtable accepts records in a specific structure. So Aron, if you type in the find in the documentation below, create records async. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can create a single record or you can create multiple records. We're going to create multiple records at a time. Yep. You'll see here what it's saying, how it accepts it. And I never look at this because it confuses me, but if you go down a little more, you'll actually see they were very nice. And they put a real world example of what they're talking about. So here you'll see, let record IDs equal await table create records async. And then it says, okay, between.
Sorry about that. Let me just put it here because we're going to look at that base. Here we go.
Between those parentheses of dot create record async, which is, I think, a function or formula, a function.
Yeah.
It's going to accept some parameters. And the parameters it's going to accept is an array with objects inside of it. It's going to accept an array with an object that has a field, and then within that field's objects has different field names, and then for each field name, a value.
Right. So let me just point that out. So we've got the array here, right? And we're saying, okay, so element number 1 is this right here. So go ahead and create a record with the field's name equal to Alice. Second element right here, go and create a second record with the field's name equal Bob. So this, if you run it, is going to create 2 records, one with the name Alice, one with the name Bob. What we want to do is create frequency amount of records with the following information. We want the jurisdiction, right? And then we can work on the dates. So initially what I recommend is let's just go ahead and create the jurisdiction, right? So frequency amount of records with the jurisdiction, and then we'll do the date just in the essence of time. And I appreciate everyone's patience. Hopefully this is fun.
Thank you guys so much.
Cool.
So here we already, go ahead, Aron.
No, go. That was a let's do it.
Okay, so in here we already have the array that we created. So the thing that we want to do is say, okay, add to this array. For everyone here, add to this array. To do that, we're going to use a function called push, which pushes information into an array. So here we'll say filings.push, and then every function has parentheses, which lets you know like something that goes in there or what it will accept. Within push, let's put a space in between those parentheses, or not a space, a return or a new line. Oh yeah,
Yep.
you can do that too. Now we're going to put the object that we want to create. And so the object that we want to create is going to resemble what we see below. It's going to be fields.
Right.
And then within that, we're going to create another object and then start putting the field names. So for here, we want to put
jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction.
There we go. Let me just, I'm gonna keep it here. This is the record. We want to put in jurisdiction, right?
Yeah, and then a colon. And then because we already know the record ID, okay, one thing to be aware of is what inputs certain field types accept. So even though we're only putting in one linked record here, linked record field types are always going to be arrays. Even if you say only this record should don't allow multiple records. It's multi-line or multi-linked. I think it starts with yeah.
So, but what couldn't we just put jurisdictions? So that array.
Right. So what we would do is put an array, and then we put jurisdiction input inside of array. Inside of array. And so now it will accept it.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
So now we have something that Airtable will accept and create records async. We have push is closed, and then at the end of that we have okay, so we've closed the for loop as well. So if we go outside of the for loop and we console.log array, or sorry, what did we call it? Filings?
We call it filings.
Okay. We're going to see now that for the one that you select, so let's select one, like the first one,
right?
That has 4. We should get an array of 4 objects.
Yeah. So let me just, before we do that, walk folks back through what we did. So we're trying to recreate the records. We're trying to create an array of the records that we want to fill in. And what we're essentially saying is that, okay, frequency amount of time, let's say 4 times, create this is how I think about it, to create an imaginary record, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just saying, okay, we're going to fill in jurisdiction. After, we're going to fill in date filled, date due, and then we're going to tell Airtable for those 4 imaginary, records, go and actually create them in the base. So this is going to be kind of our imaginary records that are currently only living in our scripting block. Yeah. So if we run that, let's go pick that first one. We have that array, which has those 4 records. So it's going, it feels a little complicated. So it says state 1 is going to be the linked record for the first one. Same thing for the second one, right? So we're creating those 4 records so we don't forget about them. So if we were to create records, right? That's the final step here. Mm-hmm. Before we do dates will be like an extra. So if you want to keep and stay for the advanced part of this, stay for the dates. So we're going to actually create the records. Mm-hmm. So how do we create? So now we just kind of have to say, like, take these imaginary records and create them in the right table.
Yeah. So Airtable has some special functions that they've created based on what you're doing. So what we can do here is say await, because we're going to go tell Airtable to do something. We're going to say we never declared our filing table, which is fine. What we're going to do is we're going to just do it in line. We'll say base dot get table, and then because we're creating records in the filings table, we're going to say filings, and then we're going to continue on in line. We're going to say create records async, and make sure you select records because we're doing multiple records at once. And then we're going to put that filings array that we created into Airtable.
Okay.
And we will
cross
our fingers and hope that this works on the first time. Try similar to how we do with complex formulas.
So here we're getting the table so Airtable knows which table we want to update.
Right.
And here we're just saying, okay, we've constructed those imaginary records. Go ahead and create them in that base that we just declared. So if this all works, if I pick record, run, no output, we have those 4 outputs. All right.
Yes.
All right. So that's success.
Yeah.
So we can do success.
Yeah, celebrate small wins.
We have the confetti. There we go. So now it's cool, and just like as an intermediary, now whenever you want to kind of create, we see those 4 linked records. So if you want to create this one, so that's step 1. All that's left to do is specify the right date. So I
Yeah.
think what we should do is do 1, and then we could, folks can extrapolate for the others for
Yeah.
the start date, the due date. So let's think of like, how do we create, so if it's quarterly, we want to go ahead and take the first of the month and then add 3 months.
Hmm.
And then we'll put that into
Yeah.
the start period. Would that be the end period or the start period? That would be the end period, I imagine. Right? Because if you have a start, that's like your start date. You want to the next quarterly is the end date of that filing.
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
do that and then work backwards. Yep.
Okay,
I
yeah,
agree
cool.
with you there.
Okay. So
So
how do we do that?
yeah, so one of the things that we did is so similar to how we created the filings array on line 27. We're going to need to create a variable for end date, right? And
Yeah.
we can do that. Yeah, you can just create let end date
So I think, okay, yeah, I got you. Let end date
um,
equal.
equal. I think you can say new date. I think, and then space. Yep, good. And then just do that. And what we're doing
Right.
now is we're letting and close the parenthesis too. Just close that. So we're
Right.
kind of creating that box again. So what we're letting the script know is that we have end date as a variable, and right now we're using just new date as what Aron wrote. Just creates a timestamp basically. It creates the date of whatever time it is right now. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep changing that date in the loop. So we want to make sure we have something declared.
So let me understand this right. So we're going to create an empty date, and then we're essentially going to take the contract date or whatever that start date is at the jurisdiction, and then say like, okay, in this case, end date equals, start date plus 3 months, plus 6 months, plus 9 months. Is that kind of understanding it right?
Exactly. It's like every
Okay.
time this loop goes in, end date is going to be end date plus 1 month, or sorry, end date plus 3 months, right?
Okay. So am I right to say that this should be here? Right? So we're going to like,
Yeah. So
or are
what
we
we're
going
going
to
to do,
calculate it before? Should we calculate it here?
let's calculate it here. So go in and you can say here and say end date instead of let, because we've already declared it.
Yeah.
We can say end date equals, and then use the date add function that we pulled from Stack Overflow, because I honestly never remember how to
Yeah,
do
I've
that.
never done this either. So date
So,
set month.
yeah, get month and plus 8. This looks like it's adding 8 months instead of
Yeah,
adding.
but we can make this a variable, right? So, but what is this date dot? Is that like is that a
So
variable?
date is an object, and so just as
Oh,
so date is an object. So just as the objects that we were dealing with before had dot name, had dot all
oh,
that kind of stuff, date also has parameters within it. So if it's a date object, you can do things like date set month. So what we want to do here is actually, we already have end date. So what we want to say is end date. Oh, this is interesting. Okay.
right. We're gonna set month. So we're gonna equal. But shouldn't we first set end date equal to our start date?
I
Right?
think we already pulled start date, right? We have start date as
Yeah,
okay.
we have it right here. We have
Yeah.
start date.
So what we want to do is
So
we want to say basically our end date wants to be start date plus X amount of months, right?
yeah,
And one thing that we forgot to do or we have to think about is, okay, if we know our frequency is annually, then it's just monthly. It's just 30 days, right?
yeah. I
Mm-mm.
wouldn't worry about it. So if we just say in 12 months, let's just add 12 months to whatever that first of the month is,
Okay,
right?
that
That'll be
makes.
the file date.
Thank you. I appreciate this
Yeah.
because I'm terrible with time. Okay. I know I really am. So what we'll say here is maybe that should be our first end date then is start date. and then let's go back to the get date. If you can do them side by side, that'd actually be really great. I'm okay.
Like this,
So
let's just copy paste this.
Yeah, I always copy paste. It helps me so much. Okay, so what we need to do is we also need to create like a new date object within it. So as it says like new date, we're gonna say new date, and then date. The date that we're looking for is end date, right? Set date.
Set
and then
month. This one has set month.
Thank you. Set month, and then within that, do end date again. Dot get month. Put the two, yeah, and then plus frequency, right?
So I think the only thing we have to first do is set, because now we're only using end date. So this isn't currently set to equal the start date, right? So right now, if this is like an empty array, it has no date in it, and we're getting the month of empty, we're setting the month of empty and getting them. So here, we want to first set the end date equal to the start date of the jurisdiction.
So I would do that outside of the loop. I think that would be our first end date. Yeah. So all that you wrote on line 33, just replace that from what new date is. Replace that with what you have on line 33.
Okay, so we let end date equal
what you have on line 33, right?
Well, no, we have to actually set the start date. No? So let's just run it. Let's figure it out. So instead of end date being there, you want start date. And where you have your red circles, you want start date. Yes, that's it. We're start date. But see, my start date might not be so if I go start date, it has no idea that it's a date.
Good job. Yeah, that's true. So what you could do then is say, let's start date. Instead of it being jurisdiction and dot input get cell value, you can say start date because you've already declared it. So just say start date on line 28.
Yeah.
Equals new date, and then within date put start date. Yeah.
Boom.
And then if you console.log it.
So why don't we just call let end date equal new date?
You actually can't do that because they're two different types. I think it's two different types.
Can we do this? So let's try that.
Okay.
I think. All right. Okay, that works.
Okay. That's perfect.
So this is it offsets the GMT, but we're not going to worry about that. We're not going to talk about GMT.
No.
So essentially, for anyone just joining, I feel terrible because you must think like we've just spent an hour like talking about dates, but this has only been 5 minutes. So essentially, just so for folks coming back or just coming back to this, what we've said is that we've set the end date equal right here to the new start date. And now that we have the end date, we can come back, take this and update it here, right? Does that make sense? So we're going to add frequency amount of months to the start date based off what we had before. So let me just run this and let's console log
end date. And then you also, what you can do really quickly is in fields, put after on line 45, put a comma, and then, well, let's do that later. Because you just want to see.
Yeah, let's just run it once. So this should output 4 dates, 4 months apart. Yeah. So it worked, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is what we're going to add as our end date. I'm not sure why it's like off by 2 days. Oh, maybe because its set month is like 30 days. Right?
I'm not sure. That's something I'm not sure about. We should.
Okay,
see.
we'll figure. And we're sorry, we might be a couple days off, but we'll get you an answer another time. So I thought get month. So we might have to like set date to first to be equal to the date of before. But food for thought. See, these are the kinds of things that are real annoying. Cool. Okay, so. Essentially, now we're going to set end date as one of the fields we want to put in our array, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so comma here.
And then here.
What is it called?
I think it's
Boop.
just end of period.
End of period. So, oops, I'm just going to copy paste this.
Put your field names in.
Boom.
And
then
then
we want end date.
Yeah, and then one thing is that if you run this, actually, you're going to get an error. So run this and just so we can see the error, because we actually should be getting to errors. We've not done errors yet. Oh, wow.
No error. Boom.
That's amazing.
You were like giving me an error. I was
I know. Look at you.
You know? So let's console log that filings, actually.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so scared.
Okay. Fields. We're almost there.
Boom. Yeah.
That looks good. Okay. No, what were you afraid of? I'm curious.
I always have to do .json at the end of my dates because Airtable doesn't like JavaScript date objects. But let's go and see if it created that in.
Yeah.
Let
me.
Okay.
I put it as a. Here we go. Go ahead.
Okay. So what happens is if you do it now, what we were talking about before, if you run this now, Airtable only selects or only accepts specific inputs for specific fields. So Aron, press run and then select a record.
Okay.
It still worked. Amazing. Worked. I feel very excited and also very bad.
Boop.
This is beautiful.
Okay. So,
now we've got our dates there. They're calculated. And if we go back, they're also linked.
Yes, they are linked.
All you need to do for start date is kind of either do your 30-day work back or even, use an Airtable formula. It's like, why make things harder? Like you might not want to even worry about.
Yeah, you could. You don't want to. You just want to have one date that's correct and not worry about the script.
Yeah.
And just say, if quarterly, you can do a lookup on the jurisdiction and say, if quarterly, calculate, 90 days before or the first. So, so you really just need to minimize the amount that you do in the script itself.
I'm so excited about this date business. But yeah. So this is the fun part of once you get the structure right. So we already had the structure right to create the records. And now it's like, okay, great. Now we can just add on in terms of the different information we want to fill that record with.
Right.
We had done this the kind of old workaround way where we used to say, okay, create the string, then drag and drop and create their linked records over. I don't know how many of you had to do that workaround, but but what it only would have done was created that jurisdiction. It would only connected it. It wouldn't have given us that extra level of complexity, which would have been the figuring out what the date do was.
And I think another point of I wouldn't think I'd say this, but I've really converted to the power of this is this ability of, something that's really flexible, right? So let's say, Anne, 6-7 months from now is like, oh, I don't remember how this script works, but now we have semi-annual frequency, right? And is emailing us and being like, oh, how do we change that? But because the script actually takes this input, you actually just need to understand the formula. Mm-hmm. So let's say I actually add a frequency, that is semi-annual.
Yeah, we design it with users in mind.
With us in mind.
Yeah.
So semi-annual, and then I could just change the switch.
Yeah.
To say okay, well, one of the new options is semi-annual. And that's going to be 2 filings.
Yeah.
Right? I save that. Let's call this state 5, whatever. And then this starts on November 18th. We got that December 1st.
Nice.
And if we run this script, and we run it on state 5, it's going to go ahead and create 2 linked records. So Penny has a great question.
Pardon? Why do we have a do in there? Oh, because we didn't do date due. We did
end of period.
All those dates.
Yeah, so a few things. Quarterly is 3 months, 4 times a year, right? So we're doing it for linked records because we're calculating over the next year how many filings do we have to do. And then there's a question around like,
oh, wait, they're right. It should be, the frequency should be 12 divided by whatever the frequency number is. That's right.
yeah, but that's what we're doing here. So the frequency is 3 and there's 4. So quarterly is 4 times 3 months. So our frequency is 4.
Right, but we're using frequency to do month date add or months added. So we're actually adding 4 months instead of adding.
Oh shit. Sorry, I shouldn't swear.
No, that's a great thing to point out. Thank you so much, Penny.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a totally good point.
So what we need to do instead in our
12 divided by frequency.
Yeah, and make sure you no, frequency divided by 12.
No.
This is, you're gonna get a right. Oh yeah, you're right. I'm doing percentages all the time. And then I would for safekeeping, put 2 for order of operations, put parentheses around 12 divided by frequency.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Now it should be right. That's a super good one. I don't math. I just put formulas together. I need other people to check my math. I'm like, this is how it should work, but don't ask me about math.
Okay, these are 3 months apart. This feels better.
That feels way better.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So exactly. Yeah. So Anne, 1 instead of 12, you're totally right. So here in this case is going to add 1. So in case of monthly, here it's going to be 12, right? And then it's going to like add 12 for the first due date, and then 6. It's actually going to have a wonky order, but it should get to where it needs to go. Does that make sense? 12 divided by frequency, divided by 1, divided by 2, divided by 3. Yes, so this is the number of months we want to add, right?
Right. And if you wanted to be a little bit more clear about that, you could say months. We can make a variable called months to add, just so that we
Right. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So one thing that's been irking me is this error because we put it. So let's just put end period here. Feel bad sending this out. End period.
You want to get your datetime format out of there? Okay.
There we go. Let's just remove the rest. Like that. Boom. Okay, so at least it doesn't look weird. State 5. And then you can group this by jurisdiction. There you go. Right. We did this twice, so that's why there's 8 of them. But yeah. So Anne, hopefully this was useful. I know this was a ton of fun for me. Victoria, it's been a pleasure.
This is a lot of fun, Aron. This is and really great questions. Things with dates are they're real and they happen in work every day, but they're also such a pain in the butt. But at least scripting can make it a little bit easier. And I really hope this helps. And you can think about, if you have periodic things that you need to track, and you want to kind of create a calendar for yourself moving forward, how can you do that? Yeah.
So this is probably the longest we've ever been on the stream, but it was a lot of fun. No, it was great. This was a fun, this was a ton of fun. I'm so happy we actually, wrote a script live. Who would have thunk? We started learning this 2 weeks ago. I couldn't write scripts 2 weeks ago. Here we are. Maybe this is a coding stream now. We just write code. We come and we write code. It went from no code to code real quick. Okay. We're going to wrap this up. Huge thanks, Penny, Anne, Ethan, everyone who joined live. It's always a pleasure. If you write out exclamation mark base, you can go ahead and copy this base. I'm actually going to go and do it. So if you take that link, there you go. Thanks, Ethan. You can go and get the share base. And you have everything we built. So it's this link right here. Let me make sure that that's the right one. Yeah, that should be good. Let me know if that's not the case on Twitter. Cool. Victoria, thank you. We're gonna make this a thing. We're gonna make this a thing.
Yeah, I love this. I love scripts a little too much for my customers. I probably need to chill. But they really, people said they are like magic. They help so much. So
yeah. Okay. I totally agree. And maybe we'll do a weekly scripting. Maybe after the series. We'll see. We'll figure it out. I appreciate any feedback. Do click. I was promised I wouldn't do this, but here we are. Click follow on twitch.tv And the reason
Yeah.
I ask you to do that is you'll get notified when I go live. So I know that it's usually 6 p.m. Eastern, but I'm trying to make the time zones a little more friendly for European folks who can't make it. And I am trying to go live a little more often. So click the heart, click the follow button, and that way you'll always get notified. And in that notification, you also get what we're covering today. Yeah. So go ahead, take the script, run it, console log every part of it, have fun. And I will see you next week with autocode, I think is on next week. We're going to do some cool coding on top of Airtable. And Victoria, can't thank you enough for joining. I hope to do this again often. Bye, everyone. Have
Love
a good one.
it. Bye. Sorry, I was on mute. Love it. Bye.
No worries.